You're listening to the Replatform podcast sponsored by Maplin, an API-first headless CMS and DAM in one, and Klaviyo, an email and SMS marketing automation platform. Today, you're going to be thoroughly disappointed by my abject performance and my equally apathetic co-host, Paul Rogers. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you doing?
Do you like how I've set you up today?
Yeah.
Yeah, all good. It's Friday. It's happy day. And we've got a really interesting episode today. So we are doing a kind of a dual episode with a retailer and a technology company are working together around the topic of ensuring e-commerce shipping is competitive and delivering a positive customer experience. So first, hello to regular listeners and a warm welcome if you're joining us for the first time. Have you really got nothing better to do? Do subscribe to get a new episode alert, and please give us a like on YouTube, Shopify or Apple to make us feel very happy about ourselves. Right, what we're going to cover today very quickly is key trends in e-commerce shipping, talking about Quiver. Today, they're focused on customer centricity, what this means for retailers and shoppers. And that's why we've got Maplin back on to give the retail perspective and the impact of fast delivery on customer retention and so much more. So let's welcome our guests today. First, let's welcome Ollie Marsh, who's MD at Digital First Retail, who are the owners of the Maplin brands. And he was recently on doing an episode focused on Maplin. How are you doing, sir?
Very good. Thank you for having me again.
Excellent. Are you well?
Very well. Very well.
I'm gutted you took the background picture of a USB stick. It was deeply exciting for me on a Friday morning.
No, we don't want to be monetizing your podcast. That's for you to do.
Yeah, I did say I'd have to charge a media fee for that. Excellent. And a warm welcome to Matt Barry, who's the founder at fast delivery platform and service provider Quiver. How are you, Matt?
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. So before we start asking you the annoying questions, can you give us the Quiver elevator pitch for those who've not come across the business? So what is it and why is it needed in the market?
Yeah, Quiver is a very simple API or extension, depending on what platform you're using, that provides more faster, emissionless and more customer-centric delivery options at the point of checkout. So much like you might offer multiple different ways of paying for products, we're offering multiple different ways of delivering it that your customers can select from.
Great. I'll ask the first question. So, and this is to you, Matt. What are some of the big trends you're seeing in shipping at the moment? And I know you've got a big background around kind of shipping and fulfillment. And how does this change across different countries?
I think the primary trend that we're seeing is sort of a hub and spoke method of fulfillment that companies that we work with still continue to sort of invest in a central fulfillment hub, perhaps through 3PLs or moving away from actually owning it themselves into working with 3PLs and sort of cloud-based fulfillment services like Linker, like Habu, that can sort of do it on their behalf. And then there's a real focus on spokes. Sort of how can we use the infrastructure that we already have within urban areas to provide sort of fulfillment from stores, returns back into store? How can we provide a sort of a more responsive and faster delivery service to our customers within those urban areas? And that's a key part of sort of what we're trying to help provide.
Great. And then, Ollie, what are some of the main kind of issues that you've seen around shipping? And also, I know you've done a lot with some of these kind of instant or faster delivery methods. How have those performed for Maplin?
Yeah, so I think the longer term trend has obviously been better, faster, cleaner delivery. So most retailers, obviously have to stick quite closely with Amazon, follow, as they get Prime and they get 1 to 2 day shipping, we've got to be able to match that. So I think a lot of the work that e-commerce players have been doing up to now have been just matching that. However, I think a big trend for us over the last sort of 12 to 6 to 12 months, I would say, is faster and faster and faster delivery. I think we know that people are willing to pay for convenience, particularly in cities. People just want the stuff now and want it brought to them. So we've basically been focusing on that. As you mentioned, we have been working with an instant delivery app that has raised a lot of money and has grown incredibly fast, which is called Gorillas. We've owned that technology category, which has been amazing. We've really tackled the essentials on that range. So cables, batteries, things that people need in an emergency. Even, to be honest, HDMI cables, Ethernet adapters, things you might need if you've gone to an office and you forgot those types of things. So that's worked really well. So that's then, talking to someone like Matt, I wanted to build on that and go, how can I expand that range? What are the more products that people need quicker? Is it keyboard and mice? Is it a monitor? Is it, I don't know, this is still an open question around how much further it goes from the essentials to, well, if everything's available at your fingertip, why not? So that's something that we've been really focused on, particularly because we don't have stores. So a lot of the retailers like Currys, who are obviously in our sphere, are able to leverage their stores in order to be able to provide that. Maybe the customer goes and picks it up, or they've even talked about and are trialing various things around players, Bolts and Ubers and various partners out there who can do that last mile delivery for them. So I think, again, everyone's sort of playing in this space. I think faster is most likely going to be better, but we don't have that infrastructure of stores. So therefore, we're looking very much to the market now and going, okay, a Gorillas is actually just a retailer themselves. So we're selling to them on wholesale. But is there a way for us also to be able to leverage existing infrastructure in a 3PL fashion or whatever it is, that we can now choose the selection that goes in there and then grow that and then ultimately, get things available to people in as quick as possible?
See, I love this because years ago, the Mighty Boosh had predicted this fast delivery because they had ninjas delivering fashion magazines to the character whilst he's driving along the road. So, they were obviously well ahead of the game on that. I've got a sub question actually for you, Ollie, on that is, are you seeing, because I've talked to a lot of people about the lessening impact of free delivery. It used to go back a few years, everything's about you've got to have free delivery, you've got to have free delivery. Feels now that free delivery isn't as important a driver of decision-making and checkouts as fast and convenient, and also some of the green options. Would you agree, or do you still think free delivery is a critical capability?
I think you have to offer it. So our free delivery policy is free delivery over £1.99. No, £20, and it's £1.99. Sorry. So really, our AOV is around £100. The vast majority of our orders are free. To be honest, I think actually it's as much about a simplicity of the messaging for the customer, so that when they go on a product page, it's £150 and that's what they're paying. That's very much for us in terms of, because we've got that higher AOV. I think in other retailers with cheaper products, it may be a bit different. But fundamentally, consumers are paying for the delivery. They're just getting it part of the price of the product. So I think the short answer is yes, I think you do still need it. But is it like, are people going to retailers specifically because of their free delivery policy? No, because I think everyone has it. But I don't think you can be the first to drop out. And I think everyone's commercials are built around free delivery at this point.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, I think that's it. It's just that doesn't have as much impact, and actually it's the breadth of offering, like you both alluded to. So Matt, let's turn to Quiver. So your focus, we were talking about this before on email, is around customer centricity, and the USP you've got on your site is about customers can receive the order within 1 hour. So I'd love you to be able to explain, what does customer centricity mean in the context of shipping, and how are you achieving such fast delivery times?
Yeah, I think it's a rare experience for somebody to sort of have a delightful sort of experience of delivery or fulfillment of their items from e-commerce companies, and, or sort of from purchasing online. And a lot of that is through a lack of communication, a lack of transparency as to sort of where your items are at any given time, when they're going to arrive, any rules that are in place around whether they should be sort of delivered to the person, delivered to a neighbor, left outside, whatever it might be. And we see lots of memes and TikToks and sort of funny videos of sort of delivery drivers sort of throwing parcels over fences, and doing all sorts of sort of potentially egregious things with them. That's sort of what I think most customers have sort of come to expect from delivery. And that's something that we don't think is quite right. And so what we mean by sort of customer centricity is providing a sort of a transparent two-way sort of communications platform on which customers can inform us when they want their delivery to be made. They can select a sort of a 15-minute to 4-hour delivery window, whether that's sort of 9 to 9:15 tomorrow or 11:30 to 12 tonight in the evening. They're able to tell us when they want their delivery to be made, and we'll be there. They see where our courier is throughout that process. They get the sort of the GPS tracking too, to sort of if we've made a mistake and we've gone down the road a little bit too far, they're able to communicate with our courier, our driver, to be able to sort of inform them that they've gone a little bit wrong. So I think really it's about that. For us, it's providing all of the delivery options that a customer might want to select, and then enabling them to sort of seamlessly in a couple of clicks be able to change them if they need to as well. So that's sort of the core of what we do around sort of the customer centricity of our delivery options. And I think for us as well, we don't seek to replace the sort of the standard 2 to 3 day sort of free delivery that a lot of merchants like to offer. What we just aim to do is to provide sort of better, more precise, more accurate delivery options that a customer can select from if they so choose.
So one for you, another one for you, Matt. So technically, how are you actually kind of fulfilling the orders? Like, are you working with different carriers? Like, what methods are you using to actually get the product to the customer?
Yeah, so we're fully vertically integrated. So we have full and part-time couriers. We own the vehicles. They're fully insured. We have sort of strong goods in transit and freight insurance policies. So everything is owned and run by us. We don't really work with independent contractors. We can occasionally work with some 3PLs, and we will probably seek to do so a little bit more into the future. But it's very much something that's owned by us, from the technology and the integration all the way to the courier that's sort of arriving at a customer's door. That whole process there, the sort of physical connectivity, is owned and run by Quiver. So there's a lot of sort of different competencies there that we've been sort of building out over the last year and a bit.
If I could just add on that point, I think and I did allude to this a minute ago, like the big asset that's valuable to me is the micro fulfillment centers. So as I said, don't have stores. So therefore me putting that stock close to a customer is impossible. So I need these micro fulfillment centers, because a typical 3PL again is still going to that centralized big fulfillment center, big warehouse in the middle of the country. But that's no good to me. I've got that. It's that micro fulfillment centers that are hopefully going to be in, every major urban area. I think there's a big question, and I think Matt could maybe comment on, is what do we think the feasibility are of having the fulfillment centers in non-urban areas, in suburbs, in the middle of nowhere? Like, how's that going to work? But for me, I think, checking the box on all the major cities is obviously a key. On my product pages and in my delivery options, I want it to just be available if the postcode is within the region. If it's not, it just hides away and it doesn't tell the customer. But Matt, what do you think about outside of the cities?
Yeah, I think it's tricky because you obviously don't have the sort of the density that the one might want. And so whilst the costs of having a fulfillment center outside of a city are likely cheaper, you don't benefit from being able to sort of batch deliveries as close together. You don't have the benefits of the volume of orders that you might have within a city. And so I think fundamentally it's just a slightly different proposition that would be more costly. So it would be really then dependent on would the customers be able to sort of stomach an additional sort of £3 or £4 potentially per delivery to be able to sort of access some of those faster, more responsive sort of delivery options sort of outside of a city. And we'll wait and see. Maybe that is something that over the next sort of 5 to 10 years begins to happen.
Well, we have with Gorillas, I have seen, they're already working in Cambridge, Nottingham, Southampton, Bristol. So I mean, these are.
Are you defining those as out the way places?
No, they're certainly cities, right? But they are, in terms of, say, a Cambridge.
Yeah.
I don't know what the population size is, but to run an MFC, that's still, you need to have that level of density. I'm curious as to what's going to be that tipping point between. Yeah. I assume a Cambridge is going to be as small as it gets. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, that question, that point about passing the cost on, I think this comes back to transparency, isn't it? And I guess somebody's got to take the leap of faith from a retail point of view to say, hey, we're willing to offer higher cost charges to customers because we've identified the demand, they want it quicker, and there's enough people in those areas. So I guess it's the two working together, because no one wants to open a fulfillment centre if the retail demand isn't there to service it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. One of the good things that we're able to do is we see a lot of all of that data that comes through, the transaction sort of patterns and where the customers are, the sort of the average order value of different customers, and we're able to see that from our merchants across everywhere that they sort of provide sort of delivery to. So we don't just see sort of the data in London, in the areas that we currently operate. We sort of see it everywhere. And so that provides us with a lot of really interesting data that helps us to be able to sort of prioritize and work with some of those merchants and clients that we have to sort of help them to sort of look and sift through some of that data and to prioritize which new markets should we potentially expand this offering into next. On our side, that's likely to be Paris. So it's likely to be international before we expand domestically. But that's just based on the sort of nature of the merchants and clients that we're working with at the moment.
And you talk about kind of maybe going to Paris expanding domestically. Are you just London at the moment, or do you operate in other cities?
We are just in London at the moment, yeah. So a 7-mile radius from our primary fulfillment centre, typically which is in sort of close by Waterloo. So we go sort of as far north as Tottenham, out east to sort of Greenwich, Stratford, down south to Croydon, and out west all the way to sort of Putney, Barnes, Hammersmith.
I think it's going to be quite interesting for us once we start using this type of service is, will our product mix change depending on location? So for example, we sell a lot of gaming products. Maybe that will be more city focused. And then some of your other, I don't know, extremely long CCTV cables might be useful out in the sticks. And then it becomes a question of, well, how do you allocate the stock to the different location? Do you do different balancing? Do you have a way of then auto balancing within the network?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we're beginning to see already. We see that certain products have sort of a greater propensity to be purchased in say Battersea, Clapham, and southwest London than there are sort of in North London. So we're starting to see sort of a delta there between product types, order values, and delivery types that are selected too. We're seeing that amongst different demographics, immediate delivery is more popular, and potentially amongst slightly older demographics, the idea of a delivery window where you sort of select and choose when you want it to come is slightly more popular. So we're starting to see sort of discrepancies, as I say, sort of between different types of customer, different types of product, different types of sort of order value, and different types of delivery across London, which really then influences the nature of our fulfillment centres. Do we need sort of different types of fulfillment centres in different types of London to be able to serve the sort of local populations a little bit better or more appropriately? So yeah, we're still in that sort of phase of seeing a lot of that data and sort of understanding sort of how to work through it with our sort of merchant client partners. But in sort of 6 months' time or so, I think we'll have enough, and it'll be quite interesting to be able to publish quite an interesting report on sort of what we've seen so far across London.
Excellent. And I think a question some people have, if they're online only businesses, is, okay, well, I've got stock in my warehouse and you're currently doing a 7-mile radius. How does my stock get to you? So do retailers have to send the stock for you to hold in your DC? Do you pick up from them? How does it work operationally?
So typically they'll send it out to us. We can be flexible. We can go and collect if required. But yeah, typically they send out stock to us. And when we first start working with a new client, we typically don't have a great picture together as to which items are going to be sort of the ones that customers want to select faster delivery options for. And so the sort of first sort of 2-3 weeks are sort of a learning process for both of us, where we sort of typically get that inventory mix a little bit wrong. And so we then sort of have a process of rebalancing and really sort of focusing the percentage of SKUs that they sort of provide us with, so that it really fits what their customers want to receive quickly. And that also changes with seasonality too. So we're starting to see that. We've only been operational for about a year now. So we've sort of now gone through the phase of different seasons. We're starting to see some of that information as to what customers want at different times of the year, and how do they want that to be delivered. So yeah, lots of interesting learnings, and lots of interesting data that we're able to provide back to the merchants and the clients that we're working with, that is now helping actually those that were sort of pure play e-commerce, who are potentially now looking at opening up stores or having some sort of physical presence. It's now really helping them to decide what sort of inventory do we want to put in those stores or via partners in sort of physical locations. So it's sort of having a sort of a broader effect than just sort of looking at what might be suitable for faster delivery.
And Ollie, from your point of view, when you're working with like these fast delivery networks, are you in your ERP or your back end creating separate stock holdings, allocations there, or is it just draw enough stock from the main stock holding? I think that would be a question that operations people would have on their minds straight away.
Yeah. So on our end, there's two models. So there's the Gorillas model, or name any other app out there. They're buying the inventory. So actually, ultimately, they're selecting the number of SKUs and I'm selling it to them wholesale. Okay. That obviously gives us less control around what the range is, what the price points are. But it's been a very close partnership up to now. But fundamentally, they are the merchant of record. In that case, operationally, I'm sending a single order of stock that they're placing, that they're choosing the quantities once a week to every individual depot. So in the case of, I won't give the exact numbers, but we're coming close to 50 depots under some of these apps. So it's a lot of small orders, but actually operationally for us, it works. We do it once a week, we top them up, and they're good to go. When it comes to the model of Quiver, who we'll start working with, we're not working with just yet, but we're working through that integration, is that's still our owned inventory in their network. So for us, we'll do exactly that. We'll have a different location. We will know how much stock is in each different location. And then, the platform is going to tell us what the recommended amount we should put in. We'll probably have a minimum level, 2 or 3 units of everything that we're putting in the network. And then we'll ship that out to each individual location. But fundamentally, because we still own the stock, I will still be tracking it. So therefore, when it comes to checkout, if you've ordered a HDMI cable, it is going to be doing a live check against the Quiver API to say, in that specific location, is there enough stock to fulfill this order?
Yeah.
If there's not, it won't give them the delivery option at all. And it would just go through the standard, UPS, Yodel, courier networks coming from our central distribution center.
What is Amplience? In a word, it's freedom. The freedom to build a digital experience as limitless as your vision. Create, preview, schedule, and manage all your content in one easy place. Find out more at amplience.com. Amplience. Experience freedom.
Great. And question for you, Matt. So what kind of businesses are you working with at the moment? Are there any kind of clients you can talk to us about? And also, what are some of the kind of verticals or product types that work particularly well for you?
Yeah, that's been an interesting one for us to sort of work out over the last year. We're working with a couple of different apparel brands, and the propensity of their customers to sort of select our delivery options versus their the standard delivery options has actually been super high, much higher than we would have expected it to be. So Desmond and Dempsey that provide sort of luxury nightwear is one of the brands that we've been working with for about sort of 8 months now, and things have been really, really strong with them. We're also working with cosmetics brands. Again, the propensity of customers to sort of select our delivery options has been super high, almost sort of more than sort of 75% of the customers, when they're sort of provided with our delivery options or a standard delivery options, they're choosing us, which is great to see. So cosmetics has been really strong too. Bybee is a company there that we've been working with for a period of time now, and we've been able to grow quite successfully together. So in terms of the verticals, we're also sort of now going to be working with a few different electronics brands. We've been working with a company called Charging Angels, who provide sort of fast delivery of chargers across and adapters to companies and people across London. We've also been working with medical testing facilities and kits, pharmaceuticals too, people who want to sort of receive their prescriptions faster. They need certain sort of creams or solutions quickly. We're able to sort of work with brands and retailers to sort of provide that is to sort of when the customer wants it to be delivered. And I think sort of expanding on that is just one thing that I perhaps should have made a little bit clearer earlier. The sort of Gorillas or sort of Q-commerce industry is one where they sort of own those products and they own the relationship with the customer. What we're really trying to do is not intermediate that relationship between a brand like Maplin and the customer. What we're trying to do is support the brands and the merchants to continue to sort of own the relationship with their customers, and we're just simply trying to provide sort of that faster sort of delivery network to enable them to provide a sort of a service level that's similar to Amazon or Gorillas to their customers. So hopefully that gives a bit of a flavour for what we've been looking at so far.
I think that analogous relationship is actually like buy now, pay later. So we work with a number of partners, Klarna, Lay-by, OpenPay, and they have that they have a relationship with the customer, yet they are also a partner of ours. So all of our brands are up there and in the mix. And I think from what Matt's told me before, that's a similar positioning to where they're seeing it.
That makes sense. And are there any, I guess, products that are a bad fit, or any obviously massive products, I'd imagine, but aside from those, are there any kind of products that you maybe don't work as well with?
It's been interesting. There isn't sort of a specific product type yet. I think where we've seen that, as I said, the propensity from a customer to select our delivery options versus standard delivery options be lower than we would want it to be, that's really been much more sort of demographic centered and also average order value centered too, where the order value is sort of too low to justify paying between sort of £3 and £5, which is typically what it costs for a customer for one of our delivery options. Then the propensity sort of drops off. So it's much more around, as I say, the sort of average order value and the sort of customer demographics that are sort of actually sort of purchasing some of these items. In terms of sort of bulkiness or the dimensions of items and the weight of items that we deliver, we use a range of different delivery vehicles, from electric bikes to electric vans and everything in between. So we sort of have the flexibility there to be able to deliver a wide range of different sort of weights and dimensions. So we'll also be expanding to sort of have a more of a sort of white glove service over the next few months to looking at extremely bulky things like fridges, mattresses, things like that the customers still want quite quickly, and they want it sort of within a precise delivery window potentially that they're not able to get at the moment, that doesn't currently fit within the vehicle selection that we currently have. But yeah, that's to come soon.
I think from my side, Paul, on that question is, I think that's a big open question for us, is like, what do people really need, and what are those volumes going to be? Because for us to just put everything in that network is not going to make sense. We sell some really heavy lithium, camping style battery packs, and then we do bigger things like monitors. There's a lot of concerns there around, will it break? Is it hazardous? Is it bulky? Is it heavy? So I think the big open question I have around this whole theme of this style of delivery is, where is that tipping point going to be? And how do I find that out as quickly as possible? Because I don't think it's going to work for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a really interesting one. And I like the idea of being able to do it with some of those bigger products. In terms of like working with bigger businesses, some of the stuff that we've talked about is going to be harder for them to adopt from an operational perspective. It would take longer. Can you talk us through kind of your typical onboarding process and what it might look like for some of these businesses?
Yeah, so if they're sort of a Shopify, Magento, WooCommerce merchant, and they're on those platforms, then sort of integrations typically quite quick and simple. We sort of have extensions and plugins there, and we can sort of guide. If it's Shopify, then it takes 5 minutes. If it's sort of Magento, WooCommerce, then it might take a couple of days, but it's typically pretty quick. For sort of clients of ours that are on sort of slightly older sort of technical products, or they've sort of got their own sort of custom way of putting things together, then we sort of have a sort of an API that we're able to extend. But really what we try to do is to have some sort of a couple of different sort of technical discovery conversations with them to sort of understand really how everything is sort of structured together on their end, what they're using potentially as sort of a headless CMS, and then often sort of a NetSuite or an ERP system in the middle as some sort of middleware with all sorts of different layers in between. So what we try to do is get a good picture of that, and then we typically tweak our API and integration points to really fit with what they've created. So Urban Outfitters is a good example of this, where they're sort of running a mid-2000s version of sort of IBM WebSphere as the key sort of commerce engine. Not necessarily the easiest place to sort of integrate with, but we've sort of found a way over the last sort of couple of weeks to sort of create integration points that we think will work. And we're currently going through a process of making that happen. So what we're really trying to do there is, instead of sort of extending a sort of a standard API and sort of handing it over to their sort of product or tech teams and sort of saying, good luck, get on with it. We're really trying to sort of take more of a sort of deployment style integration approach, where we work together as sort of partners. Then we try to sort of condense the timeline towards integration to sort of be 7 to sort of 14 days. And then we help them to sort of test and QA it properly afterwards, with the intention so that sort of once commercials are signed to be able to go live within sort of 14, 21 days.
I've got a question on, because one of the models you've got is collect from store. And in-store, like, collection is always a fun process if people haven't done it before, because they might not have space for storing orders. They might not have a clear process for having them ready for a courier to pick up. What's the onboarding process in that model to make sure that the retailer can actually satisfy the order so that your couriers can pick them up and get them delivered on time within the SLA?
Yeah, so we provide all of the technology to sort of make that happen. And you're right that there's not always a standard way that some of the merchants we work with want to operate there or have this sort of ability to do so. So I think fundamentally, sort of going back to one of the things that we've learned over the last year, especially sort of coming out of the pandemic, where a lot of stores were sort of expensive cost centers and weren't necessarily adding too much value. There's been a real focus from a lot of the partners that we speak to, merchants and clients that we're working with, to sort of extract as much value out of their real estate footprint as they possibly can. And so that means sort of increasing and enhancing the sort of experience that they're able to offer to their customers. But it also means, how else can we use these sort of physical assets that we have? How can we use them for sort of faster fulfillment, to enable sort of faster exchanges at the sort of the doorstep? How can we sort of provide sort of a try before you buy service? How can we then also have sort of much faster returns back into store, so we can process it back into our inventory and have it sort of available to our other customers sort of much faster? So sort of with that sort of renewed focus, I would say, on sort of a very omni-channel view of what can we do with these retail locations. That's sort of where we've been able to come in and support them to be able to enable that inventory within their stores to be sort of offered via their sort of e-commerce platforms too. The key sort of difficulty there has been a sort of a real-time sort of inventory count and sort of understanding. And a lot of brands that we work with don't necessarily always have a real-time view as to the amount of sort of inventory that they have within their stores. A lot of time that's sort of reconciled sort of on a daily or even longer sort of interval. And so for us, that's really important. We don't want to be offering a delivery option to customers online when a store doesn't have that item in stock. And so for that, that's been a sort of a major challenge. We've been able to sort of build internal libraries and sort of predictive software where we don't have sort of an automated sort of live view of inventory to be able to sort of extrapolate and predict what that inventory count's going to be. And that's getting better and better over time, which has been great. In terms of sort of how we communicate with retail staff that an order's come through and that they need to sort of package items together and get it ready for us and one of our couriers for a certain time, that's something that, again, we've sort of owned the communication stack there. So providing them with a tablet, or some of them actually prefer sort of SMS, a standard sort of text message to a phone, and we provide all of that information to them. And we typically have sort of a 2 to 4 hour onboarding session with their retail staff a couple of times before we launch. And then after that, we have sort of regular 30-45 day check-ins to sort of understand what could we be doing a little bit differently, how can we potentially tweak our products, is there sort of an alternative place that our couriers can arrive to collect these items. So we're continually sort of then iterating and trying to improve the process after that. But no, it's been generally pretty smooth, but every sort of merchant has sort of a different way that they sort of envisage themselves doing things, and we're really there to sort of help them to sort of put some of these things in place.
So I'm assuming then if a business is a bit more sophisticated with its technology integration and it has got like a joined up omnichannel solution for e-commerce and stores, that you would then, your API would just integrate with there, so that you're not basically creating a separate order management flow. You just tie in with what they're already doing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So a Screwfix is a great example there of a company where their sort of omni-channel offering is very strong, and they use their sort of network of stores as sort of fulfillment sort of nodes and are able to sort of rebalance overnight very well. A lot of brands and merchants don't sort of have that capacity yet, and so we're really sort of building some of that out for them. What we're doing, we're not sort of too closed loop in terms of the products and solutions that we build there. If we sort of are providing some of that sort of estimation, inventory sort of estimation, and actually sort of integrating into their sort of order management sort of flow, we provide all of that infrastructure to them, so they're able to use and query that for other sort of use cases that they might have within their business as well. So we're sort of, by building some of this technology to enable our delivery options, we're also sort of providing some solutions to them within their business that they can then utilize for other purposes, which has been a really valuable secondary use case and sort of product line to an extent for our business so far.
Cool. And Ollie, question for you, the retailer perspective on this. So Matt's talked about the uptake of some of his clients and the percentage of orders that go on these faster delivery options. What are you seeing? Are you seeing the uptake across the board? Are you seeing it on very specific product ranges in terms of people switching to this type of delivery?
So we're not live yet on our website with instant delivery. However, what's made me very excited and very interested in the space is working with the instant delivery apps. So for us, we've just seen it go nuts ever since basically we got started. I won't give exact numbers, but we're doing many thousands of units over the last year of some of the essentials. So we obviously don't see similar. We're not going to see the same volumes like that on these higher value products. But I think definitely the essentials are a no-brainer. Consumables like AA batteries, iPhone cables, chargers, HDMI cables, all these kind of things that people leave at home, go on holiday, travel. So we anticipate that it's going to work. We anticipate that as soon as we switch it live, there's going to be a decent uptake. But really, we're building off that data that we've got around the essentials range with Gorillas.
Great. And then in terms of so this one's for Matt. So in terms of the zero emissions piece, this is obviously a really big area, and there's a lot of people that are maybe trying to claim certain things in this area. How does this work? And kind of how does it work, I guess is probably the best way.
Yeah, so we sort of quite core to the way that we want to run our business is that we only use emissionless vehicles, and we have renewable energy sort of charging those vehicles too. So as I said, sort of from electric bikes to electric cargo bikes, electric mopeds, electric cars and electric vans are sort of what we use, which means that the sort of delivery footprint that we have has sort of produces zero sort of CO2 emissions, which is great. What we provide at the point of sale, or sort of when our delivery options are listed, is a calculator that provides, based on where the customer's address is, how many CO2 emissions they're actually saving by selecting one of our delivery options. And we've seen that regardless of whether if some customers want it faster or they want that sort of more responsive and transparent sort of way of understanding when their delivery is coming, some of them sort of upgrade to our delivery options because they know that they're sort of saving these CO2 emissions. And that's been really, really powerful. I think for some of the merchants and the clients that we work with, what we're able to do is to provide them with on a per delivery basis, the CO2 emissions that they've saved by their customers selecting our delivery options. And we're also then able to provide sort of an aggregated view as to this is what you've saved over the last month, over the last year. And this has been really, really useful for us, both from a sales perspective, but also for those companies. As they sort of have more and more sort of sustainability targets, they have a responsibility to sort of report on their sustainability and environmental impact on an annual basis. We can feed some of that sort of real data into that, into those reports and into those sort of standards that they're setting for themselves. And that's not something that many other sort of delivery or fulfillment companies are able to provide at the moment.
Great. And then in terms of, so I know that I've tried a lot of different things on some of these more like Deliveroos and Gorillas and Uber Eats, and then ended up kind of repeating it, or it's kind of become the norm. I've got a very bad habit of doing my food shopping pretty much every day by Deliveroo. In terms of like retention and repeat usage, have you seen a big trend around people coming back and using the service?
Yeah, I think this is the most sort of impactful sort of metric that we've been able to sort of track over time, is that sort of once a customer selects our one of our delivery options, when they come back and make a purchase again on that website, what sort of percentage of those customers sort of select our delivery options again? And we've seen that sort of broadly over the last 9 months be about 92%. So it's pretty strong. And that then isn't as dependent on sort of product type. And that's sort of why I didn't give a great answer earlier, or a very precise answer earlier as to sort of what products are suitable. What we're seeing is that once customers sort of are selecting some of our delivery options, then regardless of the product type or the average order value of their next order, they're most likely going to use our delivery options again. So we're starting to see a bit more breadth, I would say, to that. And we're now also starting to see where we were obviously growing the number of merchants that we work with over the last year, customers sort of cross-pollinate there. So when they see sort of one of our fast delivery options on another merchant's page, then they're more likely to use those than they are the sort of standard delivery options.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess that's a parallel with things like fast checkouts, where when people get used to using that particular process, they quite like it and they come back and they reuse it. So Ollie, I've got a final question for you. It's the big catch-all one, which is any advice going through this process yourself, looking at faster delivery options, networks, how you do it. There's obviously a process of evaluation. Have you got any advice for other retailers listening? What are the challenges that you need to plan for around technology and process? What should they be thinking out? What questions should they be asking themselves?
Yeah, I think we've been quite lucky to have quite a low risk on ramp to this space. So again, because of the model of being wholesale to gorillas, we're not owning that inventory, we're just selling it to them, and they can deal with the customer acquisition. So that's given us a real good taste of that. So, I mean, ideally, if you can find a way of MVPing and getting an understanding of what that uptake might be, I think that makes a lot of sense. Try that. As I say, I think it still is an open question about what product's going to work for us. So that's something that I'm paying a lot of attention to. We're definitely going to try different things, different areas, and then iterate based on what works and what doesn't work. From an operation perspective, it's been relatively smooth for us because we top up the different depots with just the standard courier networks. So Yodel, UPS, who we're using every day. So we've not had to do anything too different there. We do foresee some challenges around once things are different sizes and bigger items, how we get those packaged up, consolidated in one consignment, get them booked in, and likewise how much stock we put there and where we put the stock there. But we're going to hopefully be relying on Quiver and similar tools in order to be able to guide us around what levels, what products for top up and replenishment purposes. I think finally from the checkout and various integration points around your e-commerce platform, again, we use Magento, but Shopify and the various other key platforms are going to have their integrations. I'm very excited around putting the branding on the product page, so similar to buy now, pay later. That ended up being a big customer acquisition channel for us when I first started with that lay-by, like right when they entered in the UK a few years ago. I just did not believe a word of their shop directory is going to bring all this traffic, but actually, it's proved out that has worked. So I'm excited to see that happen again, where we're, as costs are going up on Google and Facebook, how we can leverage other partners who have acquired that customer through another retailer, for example, us leverage that relationship, put the Quiver brand up there or similar services up there, and then someone just chooses that because what Matt said, they're more likely to choose a repeat service if they've used it before. So it's not really advice. I mean, my view has been try, don't go too all in until you've got a bit of data to run with it. But operationally, it's been relatively smooth for us so far.
I think that's really sound advice. I think it's really interesting because marketplace commerce in general has grown massively, but there's so many different types of marketplace, and this technology-led marketplace, the likes of Klarna's are built out and fast, and now from the delivery thing, I think it's a really interesting point you make is not having all your eggs in one basket from an acquisition point of view. Matt, any parting comments you would want to share about any advice of what people need to factor in and consider before embarking on a project like this?
I think one of the things that we really try to do is to enable it to be very much a sort of a two-way door. So our integrations are very lightweight. They can be sort of ripped out and turned off sort of as and when you want them. If we're not performing to the standards of the clients expect, or our pricing is ridiculous, then they're able to sort of deactivate and get rid of us very quickly. We don't sort of tie our customers down to sort of long-term contracts. There's no sort of monthly minimum or sort of SaaS fee to it. We try to align our incentives so that if your customers select our delivery options, then we earn money. If they don't select our delivery options, we don't earn money. So we try to really sort of have that incentive alignment as strong as we possibly can. And that's really helped a lot of merchants to sort of try this. That there's no sort of significant encumbrance around sort of trialing and using sort of this as sort of an integration. So I think that's been really, really important for us, especially in some of those conversations. And so, I would just encourage different merchants listening to send me an email, matt@getquiver.co.uk, and we can potentially look to put something together.
Cool. Thanks, Matt and Ollie, for taking the time to share expertise and insight. It's been an interesting episode. I think this is clearly a part of the e-commerce market that's going to grow. And I know a lot of brands I'm working with are really trying to work out how they speed up and improve delivery without having a massive logistical nightmare with their own infrastructure. So anyone who's listening, do feel free to reach out. And also thanks for listening and keep an ear out for our next episode. We publish every Tuesday, and do let us know of any future topics you'd love us to cover. Excellent. Enjoy the rest of your day. For more information on this topic, head over to replatform.fm for our audio podcasts. To discuss a project, or if you'd like to chat about any of the topics covered in this episode in more detail, please reach out to myself, James Gurd, or my co-host Paul Rogers via LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and keep your ears peeled for the next episode.